My girlfriend took 100K and disappeared. My name is Alex, and for as long as I can remember, I believed that love was the one immutable constant in life, until I discovered that my girlfriend Emma had stolen my entire life savings of $100,000. It began innocuously enough on a chilly November evening when she excitedly told me she'd managed to snag tickets for a sold-out art exhibit I'd been dying to see. I didn't think twice when she suggested using my credit card to reserve them, since she always paid me back within days. Over the next 2 years, those little favors added up. She borrowed a few hundred for an emergency car repair, $1,000 for a non-refundable vacation deposit, $5,000 when she decided impulsively to enroll in an expensive weekend design workshop. She assured me every time that she'd transfer funds as soon as her freelance checks cleared. She was a graphic designer after all, and work was always coming in. I never suspected that behind her apologetic texts and late-night calls, she was methodically siphoning my bank account dry. One Tuesday morning, I logged in to check my balance only to see the familiar 6-digit figure replaced by a humiliating 0. My breath caught, my vision blurred. I clicked refresh and stared in disbelief. Every dime gone. No overdraft, no pending deposits, nothing but an empty account and a debt notification from my bank. Panic clawed at my throat as I fumbled to call the fraud line. After an interminable hold, a weary voice explained that the transfers were legitimate, authorized by me, or more precisely, by someone with full access to my online banking credentials. I slumped back against the wall, my world tilting. I thought of Emma's easy smile, her warm hand in mine, the late nights we spent curled up on the couch talking about buying a house together, the way we dreamed about cruising down the coast in a vintage VW van. How could all those memories be built on a foundation of deceit? By mid-afternoon, I confronted her. She was in our apartment, headphones dangling around her neck, sketching in that leather-bound notebook she always carried. Her eyes widened when she saw the strain etched on my face. Never before had I looked at her with suspicion. I showed her the bank alert on my phone, voice cracking. At first she froze, then opened her mouth to reassure me, to tell me it was a mistake, that she would fix it. Before her expression shifted to something colder, almost clinical, she laid the phone down and said, "Alex, we need to talk about why you've been so irresponsible with your money." My world spun. "You stole it," I spat. She tilted her head, as if considering whether I'd finally cracked or was playing some cruel joke. "I borrowed what I needed," she replied, her voice eerily calm. "You weren't going to use it anyway." I remember pacing the length of our living room, the city lights flickering through the window behind me while she sat there, serene and detached. Guilt and rage warred inside me. I wanted to slap her, to shake her until she admitted it was all a terrible lie, to ask her how someone I loved so much could look me in the eyes and steal the trust that took me decades to build. Instead, I swallowed hard and asked, "Why?" Her answer was a litany of grievances. She felt suffocated by my stability, trapped by the future we planned together, overwhelmed by the idea of commitment. She claimed she needed escape, a way to reclaim her independence. She told me she'd wired the funds into multiple accounts, some overseas, using layers of transfers to obscure the trail. "I was planning to return half," she said, "but then I realized you'd never understand why I did it." That night, sleep evaded me as I lay curled on the edge of our bed, the sheets stained with tears. I thought about the time we first met at that cafe downtown, her laughter like wind chimes, the flicker of excitement in her eyes when she discovered I shared her obsessive love of vintage posters. We spent afternoons scouring flea markets, afternoons talking about travel, starting a small design studio together, maybe adopting a dog. All of it felt like beams of sunshine now clouded by the revelation of her betrayal. I wondered how many other little borrows she'd hidden, how carefully she'd planned this, and whether any of our memories were real or just manipulations designed to lull me into trust. The next morning, I visited the bank in person. The teller, a sympathetic older woman named Maria, guided me through the process of filing a fraud claim, but her gentle tone did little to soothe the ache in my chest. The likelihood of recovering anything was slim. Banks could claw back transfers made within 24 hours, but once money left the system, it was gone. Emma had been deliberate and patient, waiting until the transfers cleared before attempting any repair. By the time I discovered the theft, the money was scattered across a web of accounts, layered through cryptocurrency and shell corporations that I couldn't begin to untangle. Maria printed out the forms as I sat on the plastic chair in the lobby, my hands shaking. Legal avenues felt hollow. I knew I could press charges for grand larceny, but what would that accomplish? Would jail time for Emma ease the wound of betrayal? Would restitution orders mean anything when the assets had vanished? I pictured her in court, eyes downcast, telling me she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she was broken and needed help. I realized I could choose revenge or choose to rebuild, but either path meant accepting the end of what we had. The decisive moment came when I texted her, "I want you gone. Pack your things." She replied with cold brevity, "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Over the following days, I found myself navigating a surreal limbo. Our apartment, once filled with laughter and projects in progress, now echoed with emptiness. Her brushes lay dried with paint, her unfinished designs littered the desk, and her scent, once so familiar, hung in the air like a ghost. I changed the locks, forwarded her mail, and erased her from every photo on my phone. Friends rallied around me, offering meals and company, but each kind gesture reminded me of how alone I felt. I took to running at dawn, pounding the pavement beneath a bruised sky, trying to outrun the betrayal that echoed behind me. Slowly, I began to pick up the pieces. I consolidated my debts, leaned on my parents for a small loan to cover living expenses, and sold off my collectible poster collection to regain some financial footing. Each sale was bittersweet. One by one, I relinquished the tangible reminders of happier times. But with each transaction, I felt a flicker of agency return. I closed the joint accounts we had opened, cut up the credit cards she'd added her name to, and changed every password. I started seeing a therapist to work through the trauma of financial betrayal, learning that money and trust are intertwined, and that when one shatters, the other follows. Weeks later, I received a letter. Emma had filed a police report alleging emotional abuse and coercion, claiming I'd forced her into taking the money. It was a hollow accusation, but it reminded me that she still wielded power over me, even from afar. I met with a detective who took my statement, and though he seemed skeptical of her version of events, he warned me that false allegations could drag out the legal battle. My instinct screamed at me to strike back, but I knew the real victory would come from moving forward without her. By the time spring arrived, I had settled into a modest one-bedroom on the quieter side of town. The walls were bare, but I finally felt a sense of peace. I'd started a side project designing templates for small businesses online, regaining my creative spark without Emma's shadow looming over me. I made new friends at a local art workshop, people who knew nothing of my past and accepted me without suspicion. And most important, I rediscovered trust in myself, the belief that I could set boundaries, recognize red flags, and protect both my heart and my wallet. One afternoon, I ran into Emma at a coffee shop downtown. She looked tired, her eyes sunken and guarded, a far cry from the vibrant woman I once knew. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world stilled. She nodded quietly, as if offering a silent apology, or perhaps admitting defeat, before she turned and walked away. I watched her go, a swirl of emotions rising in my chest, but instead of pain, I felt clarity. She was a chapter in my life that had taught me the price of misplaced trust, and though that lesson had been harsh, it had made me wiser and more resilient. Today, my account is finally rebuilding. Small deposits, modest budgets, dreams reimagined. I've learned that true love doesn't require sacrificing your safety net, and that your worth isn't defined by anyone else's opinion or actions. Trust must be earned, maintained, and respected, like any precious asset. And if betrayal comes, you can choose how to respond, with vengeance that keeps you chained to the past, or with courage that frees you to write a new story. A story where you are the author, the hero, and the survivor.